Good evening, and welcome to Global Watch. We begin tonight with developing news from the front lines of Ukraine, where the conflict appears to be entering one of its most critical and certainly its most brutal phases since the initial full-scale invasion. This is a moment of profound concern for Kyiv and its Western allies, a potential tectonic shift in the long, grinding war of attrition. Russia is claiming a significant, quantifiable battlefield victory, alleging that its forces have seized complete operational and fire control over a strategically vital city in the eastern Donbas region, following a massive, sustained, and truly overwhelming assault spanning several days, if not weeks. This claim, if definitively verified, marks the most substantial military gain for Moscow in over a year, and signals a dangerous, possibly irreversible escalation in the war's current trajectory. We are tracking the immediate military fallout, the desperate defensive fighting still reported along the new lines of contact, and the urgent response from Kyiv and NATO capitals. Here is what we know right now, meticulously piecing together the claims and the painful realities from the ground. The official, striking announcement came just hours ago from the Russian Ministry of Defense in Moscow, broadcast across state media channels. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stated that Russian military units, spearheaded by veteran assault detachments and supported by heavy use of aerial glide bombs and thermobaric weaponry, had successfully completed an operational maneuver to fully liberate the city of Krasnohora. Krasnohora, a name that will now be etched into the grim history of this conflict, is a crucial logistical nexus located directly on the main arterial supply routes within the Donetsk Oblast, and is the geographic gateway to the western half of the Donbas region. This claimed seizure is the culmination of a broader offensive drive that international military analysts describe as one of the most intense, costly, and focused ground campaigns of the last 6 months. For the last 72 hours, a period characterized by satellite imagery showing almost continuous massive detonations, reports indicated indiscriminate heavy artillery barrages, relentless use of guided aerial munitions, and staggering waves of infantry assaults. The objective was clear: to utterly overwhelm Ukrainian defensive positions that had held this vital line with incredible tenacity for nearly 2 years. The operational details, though grim, matter immensely. We are receiving reports, unconfirmed by Moscow, that Russian forces first managed to bypass forward Ukrainian defenses by establishing control over the crucial southern rail spur, effectively cutting off the primary escape route and denying the last effective resupply access. Once this rail line was compromised, the Ukrainian defenders found themselves fighting in conditions of deep logistical distress, facing an enemy that was not only numerically superior, but possessed local air dominance unparalleled since the opening months of the invasion. The timing and the geographical location of this claimed victory are profoundly critical. It must be stated immediately that Ukrainian sources have not confirmed the loss of Krasnohora. Instead, Ukraine's general staff released a concise yet grim statement late this afternoon, asserting that intense, localized fighting continues on the immediate outskirts of the city. They state that the defensive units are currently carrying out maneuverable retreats, a military term meaning the tactical withdrawal of personnel to preserve combat readiness, rather than fighting to the last man in encirclement, to establish new, hardened defensive lines further west, under severe, sustained pressure. Independent verification, as always in zones of extreme conflict, remains incredibly difficult due to the intensity of the combat zone and the deliberate fog of war deployed by both sides. However, the sheer volume of Russian propaganda celebrating this victory lends credence to the idea that, at minimum, Ukraine has lost effective functional control over the vast majority of the city's territory. If Moscow's claim holds true, the tactical seizure of Krasnohora would provide Russian forces with a dramatically more favorable staging ground. It repositions the front line, allowing them to push deeper into Ukrainian territory along 2 key axes. This breakthrough potentially opens up the path toward the larger, key defensive nodes of Pokrovsk to the southwest, and critically, threatens the main road network leading directly into the Donbas heartland cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. These latter two represent the ultimate strategic objectives for the Kremlin in the Eastern Theater. But let us pause and ask the most critical question: why this push now? The why behind this sudden, bloody operational surge is chillingly clear. Russia is attempting to capitalize on a perceived, verifiable window of vulnerability. This vulnerability is driven by 2 interlocking factors. First, the widely documented political paralysis in Washington, leading to crucial delays in Western security aid. And second, the subsequent painful ammunition shortages facing Ukrainian forces along the entire front. Ukrainian units defending Krasnohora, according to Frontline reports filtered through military blogs and verified journalists, have often been forced to ration heavy artillery fire, sometimes responding to 10 Russian shells with just one of their own. This vast, unacceptable disparity in firepower meant that highly fortified defensive positions, once formidable, were systematically reduced to rubble by coordinated Russian air and artillery strikes before infantry even entered the perimeter. It was a victory achieved not by brilliant maneuver, but by the sheer, unyielding volume of destructive force. To truly understand the gravity of this development, we need to look closer at the strategic importance of this particular area, the piece of land Russia has just allegedly claimed. For months, the Eastern Front has been characterized by a bloody, static war of attrition, marked by incremental gains and heartbreaking losses. Krasnohora has served as an essential strategic linchpin. It anchored Ukrainian defenses, creating a buffer zone that protected vital military infrastructure, including critical rail and road networks used exclusively to supply forces further north and west. Its definitive loss would not only constitute a severe morale blow to Kyiv, the psychological impact of losing a city defended at such high cost is immense, but it would also create a monumental logistical nightmare. Ukrainian commanders would be forced to immediately and rapidly redraw entire defensive blueprints, find new supply corridors, and evacuate remaining strategic assets under fire, all while simultaneously trying to stabilize a newly fluid front line. Furthermore, this very public claim of victory serves a vital, dual political purpose for the Kremlin. Following earlier setbacks, most notably the retreats from Kyiv and Kharkiv, and the failure to achieve any major objective quickly, a major, verifiable victory on the battlefield is essential for President Putin and the Russian military establishment. It allows Moscow to demonstrate momentum, both domestically to reassure a public weary of endless war, and internationally to sow further doubt among Western partners regarding Ukraine's eventual success. This alleged gain comes at precisely the moment when Kyiv is urgently appealing to NATO and other allies for faster, dedicated delivery of sophisticated, long-range weapon systems, and critically, vast, immediate amounts of standard ammunition needed to counter the sheer volume of Russian firepower. The situation on the Krasnohora front underscores the immense, unsustainable pressure currently bearing down on Ukrainian forces, who are now fighting a numerically and materially superior enemy under resource constraints unseen since the desperate opening phases of the war 2 years ago. The geopolitical fallout is already reverberating in world capitals. In Washington, the immediate reaction from the Pentagon and the State Department was one of deep concern, framed by frustration over the stalled aid package in Congress. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin issued a statement stressing the immediate need to move forward with the next tranche of security assistance, stating unequivocally that every day of delay directly correlates to strategic loss on the Ukrainian battlefield. We are told that intensive diplomatic consultations are underway between Kyiv and the White House to ascertain the full extent of the territorial loss and to accelerate the delivery timelines of already promised weaponry. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, the atmosphere is somber but defiant. President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an address recorded earlier tonight, avoided confirming the loss directly, instead focusing on the sacrifice of the defenders and promising swift retribution. He reiterated his message to Western partners. The cost of hesitation is measured in kilometers of our land and the lives of our people. The moment for incremental support has passed. We need decisive, overwhelming force delivered now. The Kremlin, naturally, is seizing the moment for maximum propaganda effect. State media is framing the Krasnohora operation as definitive proof of the failure of Western military strategy, and a sign that Russia's strategy of strategic patience, outlasting the West, is now bearing fruit. This victory will undoubtedly be used to legitimize the ongoing, quiet mobilization efforts across Russia, painting the conflict not as an invasion, but as a righteous campaign necessary to secure vital Russian territory. To analyze the military and geopolitical significance of this claimed victory, we turn now to Dr. Helena Kraus, a senior fellow for European security at the Royal Institute for Defense Studies, joining us live from London. Dr. Kraus, thank you for being with us at this critical hour. Setting aside the official verified status for a moment, if this city has fallen, if the defense line has truly cracked, What does this development tell us about the current, deeply worrying state of the war in the Donbass? This tells us two things clearly, and neither is reassuring for Kyiv. Militarily, it signals that Russia has found a successful, albeit incredibly costly and brutal, method of breaking highly fortified lines. They are using sheer mass, combined arms synchronized with aerial superiority, to simply overwhelm a defense that is running critically low on high explosive ordnance. This is a deliberate, agonizing return to a very brutal Soviet-era style of offensive warfare, the destruction of fortifications from the air, followed by relentless infantry pressure. But geopolitically, the message being sent by Moscow is perhaps more chilling. Russia is signaling, clearly and deliberately, that it believes it can outlast Western cohesion and, critically, Western material support for Ukraine. Every city that falls, every kilometer of ground lost during this acute period of delayed Western aid reinforces the Kremlin's core, patient narrative that time is unequivocally on their side. For Kyiv and for President Zelensky, this loss puts immense, immediate pressure on him to demonstrate to his people and to his soldiers that Western commitments are tangible, that the munitions are loaded onto planes, and that they are arriving fast enough to prevent a catastrophic cascading failure of defenses along this critical 300-kilometer front. Dr. Krauss, let's talk about the operational tempo. We have seen Russia pay an astronomical price in personnel and equipment for incremental gains. Is this tempo, this grinding offensive that reduced Krasnohora to rubble, something Russia can sustain over the summer months? Or is this a focused, maximum effort designed to exploit a temporary vulnerability? That is the billion-dollar question, and the answer, tragically, is mixed. Can Russia sustain this type of hyper-costly assault indefinitely? No. Their casualty rates remain historically high. However, their primary advantage is twofold: depth of manpower reserves, even if poorly trained, and, more importantly, the ability of their domestic military-industrial complex to outpace the West in producing key munitions like 152mm artillery shells and crucial drones. What we are seeing now is likely a focused, temporary maximum effort. They recognized the exact moment when Ukrainian reserves were exhausted and ammunition stocks were at their lowest point, and they hammered that point repeatedly. Their objective now is not necessarily to seize all of Ukraine, but to consolidate all of the Donbas region before any major new Western aid package can fully arrive and be distributed to the front lines. The strategy is to present the West with a fait accompli, a consolidated territorial gain that will make any future counteroffensive exponentially harder and more costly. They want to dictate the terms before Kyiv can stabilize. If Krasnohora is indeed the gateway, what should we be watching for next? Is this strictly a tactical shift, or could it genuinely lead to a major strategic breakthrough that changes the entire map of the war? It is primarily a tactical gain right now, but a very dangerous one because of the geography. Russia will immediately attempt to exploit this breach, sending reconnaissance and assault groups deep into the newly exposed hinterland. The next few weeks will be utterly decisive. The focus will be on whether Ukrainian forces, having successfully executed their maneuverable retreat, can stabilize their new defensive lines further back. Can they use natural barriers, perhaps the difficult terrain near the Wolves River, or already prepared secondary fortifications and minefields? If they cannot, and Russia manages to move heavy armor across that open terrain relatively unimpeded, exploiting the weakness in the Ukrainian flanks, then yes, Anchor, we could witness a strategic breakthrough. That breakthrough would put the larger command and control centers, cities like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, seriously at risk for the first time in many months. The immediate, swift, and effective flow of Western long-range artillery and advanced air defense systems is now more critical than ever. Without it, the dominoes could fall quickly. Dr. Helena Krauss, Senior Fellow for European Security, thank you for your critical and sobering insight into this perilous moment. The situation remains acutely fluid and highly volatile on the Eastern Front. Beyond the strategic implications, the humanitarian tragedy unfolding in the areas surrounding Krasnohora is heartbreaking. Thousands of civilians are reportedly trapped in surrounding villages, caught between the retreating Ukrainian forces and the advancing Russian lines, facing impossible decisions about perilous evacuation routes, which are often now under heavy fire. We continue our relentless effort to monitor all official statements and, crucially, to corroborate independent reports regarding the true status of this key city and the new lines of defense. We will provide immediate updates as they become available on our website and across all our social platforms. Our team of analysts and correspondents remains dedicated to breaking down the claims and counterclaims from this major, decisive escalation in the Ukraine war. For the very latest developments and continuous, objective reporting, please make sure you subscribe and enable notifications on our platform. That is all the time we have for tonight's extended broadcast. Thank you for joining us on Global Watch. Good night.